Welcome back to Plug and Pay, the talk show where we bring you the latest and greatest of global payroll. I'm Angelique, Payzaar's head of content, and as always, I'm joined by the lovely Max, our head of service delivery. So how are you doing today, Max?
Doing great, Angelique, despite the winterish weather in the Netherlands. We've been onboarding new customers with a lot of engagement in global payroll. Our friends in payroll are moving into year-end and year start, so a very hectic period, but I'm excited to be back with you on this podcast.
That's right. And also the team got to meet you in person just a couple of weeks ago when Max came over to Barcelona. And that's basically one of the things we're going to be talking about today, because today's episode is extra special because we're going to be recapping not just one, but two of our recent events. So Payzaar on the Go first hit London, and the spotlight was on how service providers can modernize their offerings. And then in Barcelona, we did our first event there, and that was focused on bringing the payroll community together with a night of networking and industry insights from yourself, actually. So we have written up some of these key takeaways. You can find them over on the Payzaar blog. But I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into these events with you, Max, since you were there as well. Starting with the London event. So that was a little bit different as well, something a bit new for us. So tell me a little bit about what stood out for you.
Yeah, thanks. So, we were in lovely London. I think it was raining at the time, so it felt like home for me.
And me too.
Yeah, exactly. So it was kind of a new setup we did because it was an exclusive invite-only event for payroll providers, service providers, and accountancy firms. So we really tailored it to the next segment and also tailored the presentations that will be relevant for them. So we talked about how providers can modernize their services, meet changing demands of their customers, how to find a balance between a tech platform and services, and kind of find the best spot. And to that, we also had a very great agenda that looked at talent, the services, the tech. So it really combined everything. And we had Nick Day from JGA Recruitment, speaking about talent and attracting and retaining those people from all the way to baby boomers to Gen Z and possibly even Gen A, which I believe is referred to as my kids, who might be payroll professionals of the future. We also had Matt Crick from the Chartered Institute of Payroll Professionals, CIPP, really giving us a rundown on legislative changes. We had Lara Smart as well, talking about how to partner with customers and how customers should partner with payroll providers. And of course, our own CTO, Trevor Townsend, speaking about technology developments. They all tackled different angles, and it was really relevant, and the engagement in the room was very exciting.
Definitely. And I think it was, as you said, interesting that this time the focus was specifically on providers. So if we start with Nick, for example, he shared some insights on recruiting global payroll talent. And he actually started with the question of, are you looking in the right places for your talent? So yeah, he definitely got us thinking.
He did. I might be a bit traditional. I think I found my first ever job to apply for in the newspaper, and a little ad and an address to send something for, to then get a resignation letter almost 2 days later. So I was like, okay, this might not be the right spot. Myself, I think you as well, Angelique, were very active on LinkedIn, and I thought that's the way to go, right? To find a new job, and for me as an employer to find people. But Nick was thinking, he emphasized that this is probably a traditional form of recruitment that I just shared, like LinkedIn. And that's not a way to, for instance, attract Gen Z, because they are looking at other platforms, even TikTok. I like, no way, TikTok for finding new jobs or attracting talent. So that's really different. And then maybe more traditional, with all due respect, accountancy firms also need to take into account kind of their online presence and their overall employee branding and kind of that sense of purpose that the new generation in the workforce is looking for. They want to align with that purpose, but then you also need to brand yourself online very clearly of what that purpose is and how you treat people, how you do flexible work arrangements, and not just on LinkedIn, because those people aren't on LinkedIn. So they are on TikTok and others. And also the emphasis he made on recruitment agencies, that I almost feel like the the name doesn't do justice to what they do, because they are much more than, hey, here's a vacancy, let's place someone there, and that's it, right? Nick really opened up how JGA does this, and I think it's kind of phenomenal what he did.
Definitely. Yeah, I think there was a word that kept coming up throughout his talk, which was engage and engagement. So it's not just about attracting talent or retaining it. It's actually about, engaging the talent. One of these quotes that he put up on the slides there was, a company's ability to adapt to change is proportional to its ability to attract, retain, and develop the right talent. So that was one of the quotes that actually stayed with me, made me think, that's how you bring value, to your business, because at the end of the day, payroll is a people's game. So
Definitely.
I think he left us with look after your people. So moving on from recruitment to compliance, as you mentioned, Matt Ackrig was delivering some insights on new legislative changes and, how to navigate those. And some of them included, there was a lot. So just a few of them included pension schemes bill, the national minimum wage, equality, race and disability bill, employee rights bill, mandating payroll benefits, and a lot more. And again, this was specific to the UK, so the insights he was giving were going to be super relevant to everyone there. Yeah, he kept us engaged, using that word again, and interested, with all the changes he was explaining about. But it was also, for me at least, a reminder of just how complex, payroll can be.
Exactly, and that's UK payroll, right? Imagine you manage a global payroll of 60 countries. You will have all of these lovely legislative changes across all those countries. But what kind of stood out for me is first the memory of me managing those countries and thinking, oh boy, this is really, really complex. But also you see this greater societal change where you have equality, employment rights, employees really being protected, from parental leave to maternity leave to minimum wage, making sure everyone can earn a decent living with the inflation that's in place, equality, all of that, and that kind of trickles down from the politicians to the overall world and the economic forums to then making it relevant in legislative changes to then having the HR departments and companies as a whole taking a position and a stand on how they see these things, and then implementing those new rules and bills in practices from HR to payroll. So I think that's really how you would see all of this. Societal changes actually result into a change for the payroll professionals. And although you can, bring a payroll in-house, I think one of the surveys we did said that if you choose a provider, it's kind of a balance of their services, their coverage, and their tech platform. But what makes you stay at a provider, to bring it back to people, is your contact person. So you rely on that payroll provider to be updated constantly with the legislative changes, and not only just recite a new bill, but actually translate that into something that's actionable for you as a business. And it's super hard to keep up with all of these changes, right? Because that requires like a full-time compliance person to do this. Therefore, you see a lot of companies outsourcing that practice to providers who specialize in trained people who might be registered and certified at a CIPP or PAYO, or in my country, NERPA. So all of that leads to a data point, right? A change. A maternity starts here, or this is a benefit and it might be taxable, or this is something you can or not include in your payslip. For instance, Angelique, when GDPR started, there was actually a change in the Netherlands too, where it used to be mandatory to put your social security number on a payslip. And at the time, they were still mailed via regular post. And then that led to a change to say, well, if that's intercepted, someone will know your social security number and a lot of other details. So that was actually removed from the payslip, and it was also audited by the tax authorities to make sure that it didn't land on there. So that's kind of how you trickle down. And that comes to the thing I used to say, instead of rubbish in, rubbish out, because payroll is not rubbish, but rubbish data in means compliance out. And that leaves us to one of the themes of the event. It takes two to tango, right? It's the legislator with the payroll provider. It's the payroll provider with the customer. So there's a lot of dancing in payroll, if you will.
A lot of tangoing, definitely. Yeah, that was like the theme of our previous event, but it still rings true, because at the end of the day, working together and collaborating is is what makes the difference between having a good and successful partnership or not. So that actually leads us nicely on to our next speaker, who was Lara Smart from LSC Group. Lara is an expert that we collaborated with on both our London and our Barcelona events. And in London, she was talking about evolving customer demands for providers, whilst in Barcelona, she was talking more broadly about the importance of partnerships, no matter where you are in the payroll world. So out of those two talks, what were some of the highlights for you, Max?
Well, first of all, Lara is always inspiring and a very energizing and fun person to be with. So that on itself was a highlight to have Lara speak at our event. But she emphasized very much in line with how we approach the market that there just isn't no one size fits all approach also for providers. Because yes, they have their standardized processes and they need to maintain efficient operations, grow their margins, and essentially grow the business. But then again, every customer is unique. So she pleads to service providers to, yes, standardize and provide that expertise, but also align with specifics of a specific customer. They might have people on the customer end that are not really down to the payroll speak or have difficulty interpreting languages or deadlines, and say, okay, we might need a little bit more service here compared to if there is an educated customer who might need a bit less involvement. So I think this also comes down to what Nick said. If you look at your people and your expertise, yes, compliance is one thing, but having the interpersonal and cultural awareness and skills to adapt to a specific customer is super, super important. And Lara was not only there in London. Yes, she is quite a traveler. She was also in Barcelona, where she kind of took the same theme further and kind of discussing the importance of trust and transparency in a partnership. And she shared us with a line or a quote to say, tell me something about my business that I don't know. It kind of struck me by surprise, because I said, okay, well, that's a very interesting question. So the plea was, have your customers answer this question, which gives you insights to how you kind of need to design your way of working as a provider to really add value.
100%. Yeah, I really like that quote. I think it was from Karen Brady, who's a popular businesswoman in the UK. I grew up watching her on The Apprentice. So yeah, definitely gets you thinking. Lara's speech definitely got us all thinking. And yeah, just reminded us the importance of the relationships that we built around our businesses. So next, let's move on to Trevor's talk back in London. And he was focusing on technology's role in modernizing payroll services. So Max, from your perspective, tell me a little bit about what Trevor mentioned about these technology trends.
Oh, Trevor always has a lot to share, and he waves his arms and he's super energetic. Anyone who hasn't seen Trevor live, go see Trevor live at one of our next events. But he made a clear case, for adaptable tech solutions and kind of microservices, because he always says, whatever tech or platform or SaaS or whatever you would need, even AI, you would try to implement, it's not the hammer that will turn every challenge, i.e. a nail, into something that then moves away. So he says, off-the-shelf software often kind of falls short. So providers should really explore kind of low-code or no-code platforms. And for those listening, I think Nick Day posted something really interesting to say no-code has kind of the future of payroll. But that also means that there is less customization, which does make it easier to integrate with customer systems like HCMs or finance ERPs, but really drive down that no-code platform and only make it configuration changes and not code changes. Because if you make code changes, you need to maintain it. Someone has developed the code. He or she might leave over time. So his advice is really use technology to make services more efficient, scalable, and client focused, and have the people focus on that client relationship.
Definitely agree. And I always love hearing Trevor talk, whether it's in Dublin or in London. It's always a pleasure. But coming back to Barcelona then, as we mentioned, it was our first event there. And some of you may know that we have an office in Barcelona. So I'm actually based in Barcelona. We have a lot of our team here. So I was really intrigued on a personal level to see how our first event in Barcelona went, how the payroll or Nominas community was like here. And I'm happy to say that we had a great turnout. Lots of lovely, passionate payroll professionals came to join us. and there was lots of interesting discussions. So what did you think, Max, for our first event in Barcelona?
Well, Barcelona is incredible, right? If only for the people. We have a great team, including you there. It was great to also meet the other team members again. We had a great venue with a beachside setting, a lot of very passionate payroll professionals who were not afraid to share their opinion. We had both providers and customers. We even had some other payroll providers who you would perceive to be a competitor, but we are in the business of advancing, the industry as a whole. So we welcome anyone to our events. And there were some old and new friends. And for me personally, a shout out to Payzaar, because he traveled all the way from Hungary to finally meet me in person, and for me to have an opportunity to meet him. So it's so great to meet new and old friends and just connecting together over some insights and a nice drink or two afterwards.
Definitely. And yeah, it was a pleasure to meet Payzaar in person, because he actually featured on the Plug and Play podcast. So I did know him virtually, but yeah, both Lara and Payzaar have featured on the Plug and Play podcast as well. So I will link those in the description so you can go hear our lovely friends chatting with us as well. But for now, I wanted to ask you, Max, a little bit about your keynote talk, because you were talking about one of our new exciting advancements at Payzaar, which is the latest issue of our Global Payroll Insights Industry Report. So if you remember, in the first half of this year, we produced the first edition, and it had a great reception from the payroll community. So over the last 6 months, more or less, we have been working on the next edition, and Max kindly shared the sneak preview with the attendees of the event. Can you tell us a little bit about what were those key takeaways that you mentioned?
Of course, yeah, and it was great to present the second issue. And I believe anyone interested in the issue, they can go to our website and download it. Maybe Angelique, you can add a link in the episode notes. Yeah, for them to download it. It's all free, and it has great insights which will help you, have your conversations internally, strategize, and just gain overall insights into the global payroll industry to advance your own professional development. Maybe before we go into the key takeaways, how we kind of do these industry reports is that we don't make it kind of a mathematical, statistical exercise, because I've seen a lot of those surveys, and although it's statistically supposed to be relevant, it kind of misses real insights from the real people who do payroll. So therefore, what our approach is always, we do a lot of polls on LinkedIn. I do those. We talk to a lot of customers, leads, clients, partners, to really understand what's happening in this space. That's why I'm so proud to kind of present the industry report. So do go and fetch the report. It's all free. And then again, Angelique will add that in the episode notes. So we kind of structure our report with 4 big different themes. The first one is trends, then strategy, then operations, and then controls. A little bit biased because those are usually the ones that I look at. So that's why it's structured as such. So trends in terms of the latest industry report was to kind of link to what Nick Day also shared, that there's a really difficult to find the good talent, right? Everybody indicates that, I think it was over 80% that indicates that it's difficult to find payroll talent. So for the people listening or in payroll, you are in high demand. And there's also kind of a shift in focus from more skill-based to kind of more experience and potential. I always laugh when I see ads to say, have you worked with XYZ system? Have you worked with XYZ country or XYZ provider? Because that's a snapshot in time. You don't just hire for today, you hire for the longer term. What would you do if you onboard to a new country and your existing staff doesn't have experience? You will not just immediately hire a new person, you will develop them. Yeah. So prioritize in their talent and kind of ability to learn and their potential. And then in return for the global payroll professionals out there, make sure you continually develop. There's a lot of free stuff out there, like our industry report, other webinars. You could join your local committees, your local industry bodies. Make sure you continuously invest in career development. and grow your network. I had a manager, Elmer van Liene at PwC, who always told me, and this will be Dutch, je bent zo sterk als je netwerk, which means you're as strong as your network. It just doesn't rhyme as nicely in English. But to close that off, like embrace the Gen Z expectations, right? My parents still say to me, oh, you're a job hopper. You've moved here, you've moved there. How can you work from home? I said, well, I'm at least here at home when needed, and I work whenever I want to work and still deliver on time. So for the companies out there, adopt those modern, tools and flexible work arrangements. And I think something that's dear to your heart as well, Angelique, is pay transparency, right? So make sure it's just transparent, because you'll be hiring a payroll professional. They will find out anyway. Make sure you're transparent there. Now, let's move to strategy. I'm super pleased about this, because finally the market has told me and the professionals have told me that they embrace a hybrid provider strategy, especially if you have a high global footprint. You will combine maybe a global provider, a regional provider, and some boutique local providers, and wrap that all maybe with a platform like Payzaar, because that ensures you have both standardization of your data, your workflows, and all of your controls, but you do have the flexibility to meet the diverse payroll needs. You might need more services in one country, you might have an in-house payroll here, and you might need to consolidate something there. So that's great. And then also, whenever you choose a platform, always prioritize local expertise, because whatever arrangement you will choose, it will all come down to actually touches your local process, which nicely ties back to our London event, where we focus on the people part as well of that payroll process. So choose the best between local and global, which you can refer to as glocal. Now, lastly, we also asked the establishment of shared services, and it really becomes the practice. I think it was 50% of people who indicated they have some sort of shared services. But I think, aside from the obvious aims of a shared service center to drive efficiency and scalability and all of that, I think a misconception is that shared services also always mean you have a shared service center. Services can be done remotely as well. Right. For instance, when I worked at Zoom, I had a global payroll manager role. We were also shared services, but we were located at home in 3 different regions. So shared services means you combine a scope of work, which doesn't necessarily mean you combine them at the same place of work. That moves us to operations, which is very detailed, but I love it, especially this time of the year. That's payroll calendars. Payroll people live and breathe by a payroll calendar. Ask them any day and time, wake them up in the middle of the night and ask them what the next deadline is. They will tell you immediately what the next deadline is. I kind of call this the art of the payroll calendar, and it also relates to your service level agreements, SLAs, with providers. So I always plea both providers and customers to set realistic expectations. When do you submit data? When do you get trial results? And what is the lead time if those would be rejected? And in order to squeeze the timeline, you need to focus both on pre-payroll, so before you submit, and post-payroll efficiency and automation, as well as reduce that cycle time in between. Because in the report that I mentioned 100 times, but I will still mention it 100 times, there's some benchmarks of how many hours people spend on pre-payroll and run payroll. I think the benchmark was review a payroll in 2 hours. The other ones review a payroll in 6 hours. And then there's hidden cost of outsourcing, right? So clearly define the cost and the services and combine that with what you actually need, because you might agree on a per employee per month, a PEPM price, but then you need a tax return. You need some advice here. Oh, can you review the contract? Down to even, can you review something in local language for me? So make sure you have a clear scope. And then also streamline kind of the inputs to reduce that manual work. Because although there are great integrations with Workday, Oracle, SuccessFactors, Highball, Bamboo, let's face it, there are still a lot of spreadsheets flying around despite those big investments. So make sure you also streamline that process. Now, that moves us to the last piece, which is controls. And standardizing your payroll validations. So the benchmark still is to standardize at least 75% of your checks and your controls. It's a variance, a threshold control, input versus output reconciliation, to both squeeze the time that you need to do it in, but also increase the level of controls you do. So you do more controls in less time. And then we asked a question about audit readiness and if you have some cake ready for when the auditors come in. But a lot of people still said, I hope they don't come, duck and run. That means you're not audit ready. And I always told my team, whenever we complete a payroll cycle, that's when the auditors can come in. Right? When you start a new cycle, you should be audit ready for them to audit the prior cycle. So that's what you work towards. And then lastly, invest in of course, technology, whether you have shared services, a hybrid strategy, but automate those workflows and ensure you're audit ready 100% of the time. So I think that was a rundown of the report, Angelique, but over to you.
Yeah, and believe it or not, that's not even all of the insights. There's even more to be found inside the full report itself. So yeah, thank you, Max, for going over those. And if you do want to find out even more, you can download it from the Payzaar website or over on our LinkedIn page for free. So to finish off the Barcelona event, we rounded up with Danone's payroll transformation case study, which was a real-world example of these insights you just mentioned in action, presented by our CEO, Mark Oliver Fiedler.
Yeah, so Mark also shared a great case study of one of our customers, Danone, a very large company with a fragmented landscape, a hybrid payroll strategy. What I would encourage everyone to do, there is indeed a video that's on our YouTube channel that I'm sure Angelique will also link in the comments, where we actually have the customers speak about that transformation and how Payzaar plays a role in this. And then there's also a latest case study you and I did together with Neil from Fernergo, which is also on YouTube. It's kind of a unicorn company based out of Dublin, Ireland, who's in the tech and know your customer space, and really a testimony of how you can handle your global transformation beyond the traditional, let's do a big transformation, replace everything, but instead be very targeted and then make those incremental improvements. So I would encourage everyone to take a look at those ones, find the case studies on the website. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me a direct message on LinkedIn too, because I'd be happy to understand your challenges, and then we can see if we can work together.
Definitely. Yeah, it was great to actually be part of that Fernergo case study with you, Max, and speak with David ourselves and, find about their experience. So definitely go and check that out. And I think what we can say as a takeaway from both events and these case studies is, for me at least, the importance of three things: innovation, technology, and collaboration. So coming back to the people again. So yes, thank you so much, Max, for joining me today to discuss our recent events. It's been great as always. And yes, do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up the episode?
Well, thanks everyone for joining those events. We will do more events, so watch the space in 2025. For those in the hectic period of year end, good luck. And we hope that all of the payrolls will be completed successful. Enjoy Christmas when it comes, and it might be that the Payzaar team has something special in store on or before Christmas. So make sure you follow our LinkedIn page, because you'll be pleasantly surprised and you'll leave payroll nightmares with a smile with what we have to offer. But I'll leave the cliffhanger there, Angelique.
Thank you very much, Max. Yes, that's right. Head over to our LinkedIn to be there and ready when it comes out. And thank you all again for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thank you again for listening to Plug and Pay. Goodbye.